being here. I'm so excited to have you. Your aura in general is always very yellow, although when I painted it, we were in a more somber time. But today, the background that you got rocking there, even the way that the sun is just beaming through and kind of blowing out the light behind you, that's your aura. That's who you are. You are just blowing out this world. Morgan is a very beautiful artist. That's how I've come to know you, through our connection, through creativity, fellow traveler, fellow community builder. Morgan is very inspiring to me, and I'm just very grateful to have you on the show. So thank you for being here, Morgan.
Thank you for holding this space for us today. I'm excited to just connect and talk more. And just, I know that our paths have crossed and aligned in the most purposeful, beautiful way. It feels so good.
Yes, I love Morgan is about to head off onto the road to go live on the road for a little while, as I am coming back from the road to Ohio. So we're passing the baton, and it feels really good to have that connection for you on the road, to be an anchor here to a lot of the spirit that you bring into this world. And yeah, see what you bring back. There's going to be so
Mm.
much beauty. So before we get into speaking with the rose today, I want to share a little bit about what came up with the birds for you today. I was on my little morning walk, and maybe I've shared this with you. I have this street corner that I always go to, and there are always birds that commune there once the sunlight hits. If you go too early, there aren't many there, but it's like once the sun has come up and the morning has started and they've all done their things in their respective trees, they all meet at this one bush. And I love to go, and it's like a beehive. They are just in and out and flying all around, and it's so good. So I go and stand with it every morning, no matter how many are there. It just always feels really powerful. And this morning on my walk, I was preparing to have this conversation, hold this space with you. And what was coming up was legacy. And it was very interesting to me because I didn't go meet the birds yesterday morning. It's something that I do most mornings, but I wasn't there yesterday. And there wasn't this sense of like, oh, we missed you or anything. It was just kind of like, oh, there you are. Like, there you are again. And like we recognize each other. I started to notice, there's certain birds that we kind of meet eyes, and I feel known by them. I feel seen by them. And I feel their spirit, and I feel as if they feel mine. And I was thinking about that in the terms of legacy and what legacy means for me. And I'm curious if that opens anything for you, and what legacy might mean or feel like for you, as someone who has lived in so many places, as someone who has, spent different amounts of time living in different places, as a traveler or a nomad, or someone who, you've set roots in Ohio for a while and now you're heading on the road. And for me, I've just really was connecting with this idea of legacy being the spirit that we get to interact with, the spirit of creativity, the spirit of curiosity, the spirit of presence. And that to me is what I felt really excited about, this idea of leaving behind presence, this idea
Mm.
of really opening that to different volumes. So I'm curious, yeah, how that lands, and what that feels like for you.
Yeah, well, the first thing that came to mind was memory. When I think about legacy, I think about the legacy of my grandparents and what they've left behind with our family and these like beautiful traditions, and the legacy of my great grandfather coming on over from Slovenia and starting his own business, and how that's still going today, almost 100 years past. And when I think about legacy, I think about memory. Like, what am I taking away from this? And what comes up for me is this whole feeling of feeling seen and heard, and the desire to emulate those vibrations in the world for anyone that I'm coming across. So whether I'm living in Ohio or when I was living in Europe and traveling around, whether it was day trips or planting myself in a place or putting roots somewhere, or even in my online community, Lava Lamp Lounge, that I run, I think about the feeling that I want to instill in others that I'm just expressing through myself. So this almost like the phrase that comes to mind is like, you belong here.
Mm.
It's something that the artist Lisa Condon said last night in this talk that I was at live. And this deep feeling of the like, you belong here. So when I think about the legacy connecting to my path, my journey, these like threads and connections that I'm like splaying out into the world, like the mycelium kind of thing. It's that feeling of you belong here, the feeling of being seen, being heard, being accepted. Um, and just if I'm able to leave a legacy or create some sort of feeling in someone that they could remember is just how they felt when they were either around me or part of what I'm doing, or even if it's just one conversation or something like that, you know? So that's what comes to mind immediately. It's like, you belong here. And it definitely is instilled into how I show up with my art practice and just how I show up into spaces. And um, someone actually asked me yesterday during this Zoom call I was in about like, wow, like the world is falling apart right now, right? Like nothing new. It's our systems are broken, but how are you responding to that? And I was talking about how, like, if I'm just able to create these vibrations of love in what I have available to me, then that feels like the most important part of my work. And right now I'm in this process of thinking about values. I have this beautiful values deck by that artist I mentioned, Lisa Condon, Live Your Values deck, and thinking about how values are showing up for me personally in my career and my businesses and the things that I'm doing, and doing more of that work. Like I have an idea of what those are, but it's, you know, using these cards and these tools as a way to identify them and sit with them, and how that can evolve and change over time. But I think that that correlates into like, you belong here, you know, inclusion, acceptance, love, like all of these things. So if I can create that memory that someone could take away from either interacting with me or like being in that like vibrational energy, then that feels really important to me.
I had goosebumps and I was tearing up listening to you speak about that too, because I'm thinking about all the people that you've impacted and in your travels and all the different places you've lived and all the places that are to come for you, you know. I was also reflecting on how feeling like, you know, traveling around, you kind of create this sense of belonging for yourself. There's going to be environments that might not meet you or match you or be the places that feel most resonant. And you just continue to get to strengthen that sense of belonging within. And so it's almost like living that in more of a fluid sense, a fluid lifestyle. It really enforces you to build that muscle that then you're radiating out to others. And so I'm seeing it on like a micro level and the macro level, you know, of like, you know, we have a right to be here on earth. We have a right to belong here, to be all that we are here, wherever you live. If you are a fellow traveler, or, you know, if you're planted in one place, it's all the same. It's just, yeah, this
Mm.
sense of belonging that I think is really stabilizing too, you know, when you can really have your feet down, it's something incredible. So thank you for
And I
offering.
think I almost visualize, oh, you're welcome. I almost visualize like a sponge too. Like there is a part of like this muscle building in me, like where I just wanted to soak up as much as I could. I switched my career choice in college way late and then was in this art department for a short amount of time. And it developed in me this like massive motivation of soaking up as much. How am I making use of my time and of my experiences and creating opportunities or seeking them out? And I just envision that as this like sponge of soaking, soaking up this like time, right? And so I think that that is connected to it. It's like you were saying, like just use of time and place and experience, and how are we using that in a way, yeah, that feels really meaningful.
Yeah, so special. I think this might feel like it might feel like a high contrast, but it might feel like a good time to go and sit with the rose. I'm feeling like there's so much buzzing in the conversation that we're having in this high vibration energy. And something that I love to witness in you is the way that you carry depth. as well. You know, we're always we're out here and we're excited and there's so much life that's just always spewing off of you. And it's there because of the way that you're able to carry the full spectrum is what I really feel for you. So if you're open to it, I'd love to go and drop in with your rose and open that conversation.
I'm
All
here
right,
for it.
let's do it. All right. So yeah, welcome to have your eyes open or closed, and listeners, if you would like to, if you're in a safe place, if you'd like to join us in closing your eyes and just becoming present in your body, noticing any sensations that are rising, noticing where your body is meeting the environment around you, whether it's the floor, couch, maybe you're standing, just noticing where your feet meet the floor. Just taking a moment to drop in. And together, let's do a deep inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. And Morgan, as we're here, I would love to invite you to just open up to anything that you notice first as we're approaching the rose and coming into this intention of speaking with the rose.
Mm.
Anything, any feeling, any sensation, any visual that might
So
come up.
I am walking up this hillside that is connected to an old castle ruin. And there's these like peachy colors, old brick, greenery all around, foresty feeling. And then I enter into this castle, and it's like a town, little square in a way, like a little maze of a walking path. And there are these roses, these bushes of roses that are just in a maze following that walking path. And I begin to smell the wafts of the rose, the roses, the collection of this community of bushes of roses, all different colors. And I begin to walk up to a bush in front of me. And as I look down to see this very full rose, she feels like this magenta pink that's just so vibrant in a way that feels otherworldly. Like, how can this color even exist in a natural form? And I cup my two hands underneath for blossom, and I begin to smell in the middle of her beautiful petals. And I'm just wafting up this sweetness. And it even makes me stop in my tracks and take a deeper breath. Then I begin to notice that there are people around me. This feels like a very familiar place. Um, there are some people that are just walking, that are talking, children that are giggling and galloping around. And I'm noticing that there's this outside noise and connection of life happening around this rose garden. And so if I were to connect and ask the rose something, what comes up for me is presence. How can I activate a state of presence and stillness, activate a state of connection with myself? Show me your ways.
Mm, wow. What a beautiful multi-dimensional landscape and experience. It feels like a culmination of many places you've been, perhaps, all in one. I'm
Yeah.
curious about the layers of language that might be in this space. And when you mentioned all the people, I wondered if there were different languages or dialects or accents that you might be hearing, if there's any birds moving about, any bird sounds or buzzing, or yeah, just the other frequencies that add to the layers there.
So as I'm entering the castle like from this hillside. It feels like I'm going from like a quiet solitude place into a very active communal place. And it's sparking a very specific memory for me of a rose garden in Europe in a castle form. So a place that this is like a direct memory. But within the community space, this square of an actual rose garden, there is so much going on. There is a man selling gelato with his beautiful umbrella and a musician outside playing a guitar in different language. There's these different dialects of languages around me, whether it be tourists that are coming to this place or more locals that are just exploring this place. And there's activity of other animals, right? Like birds and squirrels bumping around and trees and children climbing the trees and this activity that is around me. So I'm entering that solitude place, then I'm engulfed into this, and then finding this moment of presence and almost like unfolding right into this beautiful form of the rose that is right in front of me. I'm like asking for connection and stillness and like where to find that amongst all of this going on, all of the noise, the beautiful noise, the beautiful life. But
Mm.
that would be my connection into the rose. But yes, that like all the noises around is happening. And then there feels like to be a tuning in, like a tuning out of that and then tuning into the rose and what she's saying.
I'm curious if you might hear an answer through the rose, if she feels a sense of belonging.
Mm. Yeah, it's an immediate yes, that she feels a sense of belonging. There's also there feels to me from her perspective like this like sense of love and belonging and knowing, but also this sense of I want more people to hold me. I'm looking for a connection or wanting that. And so like me like cupping the rose and having this moment felt really special for the rose to be recognized and to be like asked to see beneath the layers of petals and asking a question. But in that, they felt even more of a sense of belonging to the rose.
Wow, what a beautiful, special connection that you have. And it
Mm.
feels like she remembers you too, almost like you're getting to journey back to her in this memory, but you're there still right now. I'm curious what the rose might symbolize. It feels like presence. You mentioned what is present and how can I be more present. When you cup the rose and when you hear her ask for more, for more people to hold her, for more people to hold her in presence, I'm curious what that might mean and what she symbolizes, what wants to be held.
Mm. Yeah, it's the first thing that comes up for me is I am her kind of a thing. Like I can sense her response of just being like, this is in you, ground in yourself, connect to your roots, like all of the things that and the answer feels like. Um, what is that part of the song with the sitting around the fire where it's like the real work you have to do is in the privacy of your own heart. Like it feels like this knowing. So her just re-emulating that as like a mirror to me and then also being this I didn't recognize it until you asked that question, but I'm like, "Oh, I am I the rose?" Like, you know what I mean? Like it made me feel like whoa, I didn't recognize that. I definitely was like connecting this to a different entity. But then when you asked that question, I felt in my body like, oh, I'm the rose, which was kind of a little mind blown for me. Yeah, and then that makes me think of like, that makes me think of what is that telling me? Like, is that telling me of my desire to be to be held in all of my layers and forms, and that the answers are within, and that this sense of presence is a sense of presence in my own self that I'm seeking, craving, asking about, desiring, looking for, reaching for. It's like, oh, it's me kind of a feeling.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that too. That feels really special. I was curious. Yeah, and I guess I'm still curious. What part of you does that feel like, and how much of you is there? And like even as you sit here across from me on this call, where is the rose within you?
Mm. I would say that what part of me is this? It feels like a almost like childhood wound in a way of the, I don't know, finding control within chaos, desiring to even know how to regulate and not knowing how to regulate, like just this whole like wanting to be seen and heard and to be sat with and to be held. Not saying that I wasn't, but that just like feeling of connection to self and seeing and hearing and feeling. And so that's where it feels like the deepness of it can go. And then if I kind of unfold that, it feels like this rose is sitting in my heart space and is like here. And it's just like laying on my chest, and it feels like a purring cat in a way. Like this warmth, this fuzziness, this like sweetness, this stillness, and then this reminder of the inner sense of knowing to tap into, and that it's always there.
Mhm. I appreciate you speaking so vulnerably through your own lived experience and memory, because I feel that this is a collective mission, to come back to self and to come into our hearts and to hold our hearts in such a gentle way, and come into that inner child feeling, and that inner longing to be seen and to be heard and to be held and loved. And I feel that you do that so bravely and courageously, holding that truth for yourself and speaking that truth now and speaking it through your art, through the space that you hold in your communities, through your poetry. It's all moving through you so vibrantly. So thank you for holding that.
Thank you for asking thoughtful questions.
How can you and how can others carry that deep state of presence? What's your practice? And
Mm.
how can others
Mm.
tap into tools, for carrying this state of presence, and the way that you know, we dropped into meditation pretty relatively quickly, and
Yeah.
you were just there. You guided us through all the senses. You're so connected to all the senses at once, which as a feeler and a creator, it can be a lot to hold this big spectrum, but you do it so beautifully. And yeah, I'm curious what the practice is like for you, and how others can tap into that as well.
Mm. Yeah, the first thing that came up for me is holding it loosely and play and this collaboration with chance and adventure in a way that feels like childhood giddy like. And so I find in my most like present self or activating presence is going on a walk. Like you mentioned this, going back to this like beautiful bird bush, which I'm like, what would we ask the bush? But going on, I found like whether it's going on a walk or having a moment in my kitchen and looking at the plants in my window or looking at this crystal hanging that shoots rainbows around or having a moment in your home. But for me, I find it a lot of times in nature when I'm walking around my campground that I live in, is telling myself, like presence, and it's kind of come to the point of like now that I can just activate that and tap in. But like you were mentioning, it's so true. It's activating these human senses, taste, touch, smell, It's like feel, just being able to breathe in air a little bit deeper, to then go on a stroll, a wander without any destination in mind, and be attuned to what you see. And when you see something that catches your eye, whether it be a color, a texture, a little critter going around, a flash of sunlight through a window, like whatever these things that you're seeing, is take a moment to pause and have a moment with the moment, right? So it's like it feels for me that when I go on these walks of presence or just activating that state, it feels like when you're peeling an orange, and you can peel the orange and eat the orange, but you can also peel the orange and maybe you're trying to like get one peel in, you know? And then maybe you have this orange in your fingernails and you're taking a little whiff of this orange and you're smelling it and you're tasting like this the beautiful like juices happening with these like pops in your mouth. So activating those senses is a practice a little bit. Like I think, right, starts with our sense of awareness, but having doing that with the way that I show up on a sketchbook page or the way that I'm showing up to eat an orange or going on a stroll with just no destination in mind. Like I have walked outside before and just been like, I am just going to follow this direction and be open to the universe, spirit, God, like whatever the force is, to playing with me. Like, what do you got for me? And then things happen, whether a stray cat pops out and I've got a moment of a little cuddle, or I see the sun reflecting that's bouncing from a window to a window, creating the shape on this tiny little house. And I just have a moment with it, and feel this sense of gratitude, even if it's turning to the sun and feeling that vitamin D, the light just on your body. So I would say it takes some slowing down and even going into that mindset of like adventure mode, like side quest, like where are we going, and that opens up so many beautiful doors of activating a little sense of freedom, a little sense of play, and then activating creativity. I find that when I'm doing these things, whether it's an experience or a little stroll, a moment, like when I'm giving myself this space to do that, ideas flow through me, or an idea or some like things are like it's almost like I open up this little pathway and then things are then flowing, or I'm just shedding some energy and just like getting that off of me and then bringing in some new vibrations. So yeah, that would be my response, is activating with your senses, slowing down, getting into that state of adventure, side quest, that wandering, and opening yourself up to curiosity and chance, just collaborating with chance, collaborating with what could happen.
Feels like permission too. You're just giving
Mm.
yourself permission to play and to be and wonder, and even the mundane moments of peeling an orange. Or, like I think about peeling when you're peeling garlic. Sometimes it gets stuck to your fingers, and sometimes you think you got all the skin off, but then you go to cut it and it's not, and it gets caught on the knife. Just really tuning into those moments, I think, can really expand everyday life as an adventure. I also am really feeling reminded of getting more into my multidimensional self and, life as a medium and experiencing spirit communication and everything too. The way that I felt my path opening up for me was tuning into the senses and beginning to separate them out almost. So there'd be times that I would just say, okay, my intention on this walk is to hear. I want to open my sense of hearing. So I'm going to notice all the sounds, and I might see beautiful things with my eyes, and I might touch beautiful things with my hands or my feet. I love barefoot hiking or whatever too. But sometimes if I just focus, if I just almost, get very acute on sound, that sound becomes really big. It's that focus, that intention can make something expand really, really beyond. And yeah, that I'm curious how you've gotten into it as well, because that was my practice is really just peeling each layer apart and focusing on each of them. And as you go on and as you continue to, I love how you shared your experience too of co-creating with universe spirit, I also love to do that, especially living on the road. But um I think it just opens that channel for, information to flow through in different ways and for us to then
Mm.
become just taken away by wonder and
Right.
creativity.
It's giving me two memories. The one is this exercise that I did in art school when we were learning about 2D design, and my professor, who's a mentor of mine, Emily Sullivan Smith, took us outside of the building and we had our sketchbooks and we created a sound map. So we drew a little dot of as to like where we are sitting. We drew like the little road, maybe the tree next to it, like just kind of allowed ourselves to be like, where am I? And then it was about maybe 5, 10 minutes of us hearing the sounds, but then noting in what closeness they were to us. So maybe it's that car that drives by, and then you hear the bird from above, but then you're also hearing an airplane over here, and you're hearing, this like grass shuffling, and it allowing yourself to tune in. And for me, what I've really loved about that practice of using a sketchbook, visual journaling, using some materials to connect with, whether it's that mapping or the experiencing of that thing, it's allowed me to not only like connect and attune those senses, but then to process and then document in that way. And then the other part that it's reminding me of is um, I have a little ukulele. I'm learning it. I'm like, this a little inch into it. Like learning the thing. But part of that, like I took it outside and I found a bench and I just sat there and it was just to listen. And then I started listening to the wind and hearing how the wind was blowing through the trees and like, what can I add to this? What little boop boop, thing am I like co-creating, like you said, with nature, with what's around us? So there are these really beautiful self tools that we can begin to take note of and use, yeah, in a way of attuning to these senses. Even in the way that I've documented my experience while traveling or just while daily living is if I have my sketchbook and I'm even eating something like soup or peanut butter, or maybe I'm at a little cafe or restaurant and I take the stain of the coffee and I put it on the sketchbook, or I smear the peanut butter on the page just a little bit. And I like am documenting and noting what these things are. So that taste, that scent is then bringing me back into that memory of the experience of being in that place. And then also allowing myself to be really present in that place. So yeah, that's just little things that it reminded me of when you were sharing about listening to the landscape around us.
I love that tool. I also think that's really approachable for anyone, I think that a lot of what you speak to are these tools that are just almost natural and innate within you as an artist, as a poet, as a multidimensional feeler in this world. And that just felt really approachable. And so I hope that, anyone listening might be, give yourself permission to explore that for yourself, whatever way it is. It doesn't have to be so creative, but what I feel that you are inviting, Morgan, is permission again, just to play, and to get the peanut butter on your finger and say, this is a good thing. Because so many people would be like, oh no, I got. I got a smudge of something gross on my page or whatever. And you're like, whoa, look at the way the peanut butter is smeared, And I just love that. I love that reminder that, it doesn't matter how old you are, we get to be kids and we get to play and we decide what art looks like. We decide what our life looks like. And to others it might look messy or it might not be, what they're imagining, but it's fun to be in your imagination. It's fun to build a world and a life from that place too.
Absolutely. Yeah, imagining portals of freedom. Imagination is, oh, it's huge. It's so much. Like to just imagine, yeah, to activate that state is wonderful. Mhm. Yes.
I'd love to, as we're here now, I'd love to go and speak with the rose. We explored this sense of belonging, this sense of presence, and I'd love to go back to her if you're open to that and see kind of just like check in on her. How's she doing with this conversation? Is there anything that's coming up for her and for you
Mm.
that
Yeah, the first thing that comes up is just she's feeling good. Like, she's like, you've got you've got these tools and you are held and you hold yourself through this. Like you are holding yourself kind of a thing. So it feels like a mirror. It feels like a comfy blanket. It feels soft and cozy and warm. And just the connection continues to grow from the rose. With like
what else I felt. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just saying with activating like the senses that we were talking about, it feels connected too.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was feeling is, the way that we just explored the landscape and the soundscape, and this, it might look like chaos or it might sound like chaos, but when you can be in presence, when you can hold yourself in belonging, when you can hold yourself in deep presence,
Mm.
it's all one, it's all a part of this great symphony, and that feels really loving and free, and that feels I don't know. Yeah, that word choice is coming up too. The choice to be in
Mm.
play, the choice to co-create.
Yeah, it feels like care. It feels like the opposite of self-neglect. It feels like the inner work and the choice of doing that, like you were saying, and that it is all connected and it's for this beautiful greater purpose of the umbrella of all that thing.
I think this might be a good time to go into the quote that you shared if you're open to it.
Sure. So this quote has been sticking me with me like hotcakes, like syrupy hotcakes for years. And I did not know who this artist was or really where it came from until recently when it was just popping up in my face. But the quote is, so the deeper you go into yourself, the more universal you come out on the other side. This is a quote from Marina Ambrovic, who is a Serbian conceptual performance artist. However, this quote came up to me from a mentor, an art life mentor of mine, Emily Sullivan Smith. And it was something that she summarized that quote as like, oh, the deeper, the more vulnerable you go into yourself, into your art, the more universal it becomes. And this was at a time where I was contemplating creating this artwork piece about the service industry that was very personal, very vulnerable. And this quote guided me as like a yes into that journey. And that was back in 2020. And I spent 2 years making this body of art. And I just kept leaning back on going deep and vulnerable into myself. The more universal, the more connection comes from that. And I was finding that when I started then sharing this art that was deeply vulnerable and personal, there were so many people that were coming to this artwork and sharing, me too. Oh my gosh, I've experienced this as well. Or this is like just sharing and sharing. And I was like, wow, this is a powerful thing. Like art is a tool for expression, for processing, for communicating, for documenting, for even like for me, that was like therapy. And it was a little bit fearful to share that, but then just leaning into that yes of this quote and everything guided that. I was like, wow, there's now this beautiful mesh of community and people gathering around this. And I then have just continued to live with this in the work and how I'm showing up. And it wasn't until even this past body of work that I made that is showing right now in an exhibition in Dayton, Ohio, that this artist came up again. Someone saw my art and was like, "Oh, this reminds me of Marina Abramovich." And I'm like, "Whoa, that's who said this quote." So now I'm kind of doing digging as to who she is, and I learned that we share the same birthday, which is really beautiful. And
That's
other
so
right? And other synchronicities happening alongside that. And it's interesting because when I was trying to find this quote said by her, it's not found online. This is from a photo that was taken from her sketchbook in Denmark, in like an exhibition in Denmark, that my art life mentor teacher then took a photo, that photo of. And so this quote isn't something that she's like known for or that's like online somewhere. It's just this archived, documented from her lived experience. And it makes sense in how she's showing up with her performance artwork is so powerful. So, oh, it's big. And this whole idea of just putting out that work that is connected into your heart, into your soul, and whatever that means for you, and putting that out there is drawing in those connections of people that are experiencing maybe something similar, or just that whole like, I see you, I hear you is what it feels like for me.
wow. What a powerful connection. It feels like it goes right back to the beginning and talking about legacy too and how we interact with legacy and the spirit and the memory. It feels like it's almost like you were walking in that spirit and you caught her memory and you got to see these words that almost feel like private or like a journal entry type of experience. But it feels the experience that I'm witnessing that you might have had with this, and tell me if it resonates, but it almost comes through as, you were reading your own journal. You were reading something that felt like a memory that just became alive again through you, as if she was becoming born again through you. And now you get to go and meet her legacy and meet her memory and meet her spirit in all these ways through your work and beyond that.
Oh, it's exciting. It feels fiery. It feels like energy that I feel like I'm just tapping into to be like, Marina, who are you? And then seeing her work, I'm like, oh my goodness, she is making powerful performance art that is blowing my mind. And I'm like, it's so meaningful and in the thick of life. And just you can see how this quote emulates through and through her work of what her whole art practice has been doing. I believe she's in her 70s now, but still making work. So yes, like everything that you were saying is like the legacy. That's such a beautiful word, perfect word that comes to mind when I think about the legacy that she's leaving. And then this quote interconnected to now my art practice and how it's informing these waves of like what I'm doing and how I'm showing up. And feels good. Feels beautiful. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, yeah. It also, I'm feeling into how much legacy is alive, and spirit, the spirit of who we are lives on. Because I wasn't sure if she was alive or not, as you're referencing her and talking about her work. And she almost, it felt like you're meeting this part of her that's still alive. So
Mhm.
it didn't necessarily matter whether or not, well, not to say it doesn't matter if she's alive, but it's like yeah, it feels like its own soul that you're now connected through her, to this soul and this spirit of creation. It's really beautiful.
It just is an amazing thing that one sentence can impact so much and
Mm.
can continue to like leave that legacy and that feeling. It's reminding me like you belong here, you are held here, you hold yourself. And the deeper you go into yourself, just the more connections, the more universal that this is
I
becoming.
just love that reminder too of one sentence can really make a huge impact on others. And just to show up in your day-to-day life, to look up, to look around, to interact with the birds, to interact with the rose, to just be present too.
Feel, yes.
Feel the rose, put your hands around it, just really be with it all. I would love
No.
if you could read this one more time, and that can just round us out and close this beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for for opening up so much, for being vulnerable, you know?
Oh,
We talk
absolutely.
about that a lot.
Thank you for sharing the space with me. So, Marina Ambrovich shares, so the deeper you go into yourself, the more universal you come out on the other side.
Mm. Thank you,
Mm.
Morgan.
Thank you, Millie.
Oh, I love you.
I love you so much.